Joining me at this time is candidate for governor of California, former Fox News host Steve Hilton. He joins me while traveling on the road.
It's wonderful to be with you. I just shared with you this memory. I'll just share it with all of our audience now. We're on the road, as you mentioned, in Los Angeles. I was in the Palisades this morning. We're speaking on the first anniversary of the terrible LA wildfire disaster. But we're just driving around in LA, and we literally just drove past the place where I had my very first dinner with Charlie Kirk. We were very good friends, and I just had a massive kind of flashback to that time.
That had to be very emotional, that
It was
flash.
9 years ago.
That had to be a very emotional flashback.
Yes.
Because I knew Charlie not in the way that you knew him, and it devastated me too. So
Yes.
I could only imagine.
Yeah.
So what were you doing in the Palisades area today, Steve?
So two things. So we had an event as part of my campaign where I was laying out, along with a few other friends and colleagues and people I'm working with, a plan to make sure that this never happens again. Because the big thing that we all have to remember a year on is that this was a totally avoidable and preventable disaster. Of course, it's true that fires happen. By the way, this fire we now know was ignited by an arsonist. But every single aspect of the fire disaster was preventable. And so the plan that I laid out was how we would, as governor, I'd make sure this never happens again, because we'd have proper fire prevention, forest management, both in the Sierras for our wildfires up there and here down on the coastal ranges, brush clearance, all those things that are just basic common sense that weren't done. Ending the extreme environmentalism that meant, for example, that the fire that actually ignited the fire department failed to extinguish it, not by accident, not because of incompetence, but because they were preoccupied with environmental rules that meant that they couldn't bulldoze the site as they would have done in order to preserve some plant, the milk fetch plant. And so we were laying out plans today for how to make sure it never happens again, and also to make sure that we have proper emergency response in California, which totally failed a year ago. And we got to remember that we're that who knows when the next earthquake will hit, etc. So as governor, my first responsibility will be to keep people safe. And so we laid out a plan today and published plans for how to do that. And then later in the day, I was at the They Let Us Burn protest in the Palisades, right at the heart of the Palisades. And it was a very, very moving occasion. I was there for hours just listening before I made my speech, just listening to residents and leaders like Spencer Pratt, who's been such a powerful voice in all of this. And actually, I've got to be honest with you, I've been back many times to the Palisades during the course of the past year. I've been very, very engaged in what's been going on there and all the failures and lies of Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom and so on. But even I was shocked at what I learned when you hear the testimony of the people there who've lost everything. And most people still haven't got anything back. Most, the vast majority, 5% has been it's just a disaster. And they've lied and lied and lied again. And the scale of the lies and the gaslighting, there were many signs there that we enjoyed. I mean, one of them was end the Bass lighting. It's just the rage against Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass was just so strong. And I was there to listen, to learn, and to express my determination when I'm governor to fight to make sure that never happens again, but also to deliver the promises that Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom broke when they said that they would expedite permitting and speed things up and make sure things got done quickly and insurance and all these things were taken care of. None of that's happened. None of that's happened. Yeah. And when I'm governor, I'll make sure that it will.
None of it has happened. You're exactly right. And boy, we sure don't hear about that in the media here in California, do we?
Exactly. Well, I just think that, the real truth of this is that it exposes so much of what's gone wrong in California across the board, which was, the consequence. Now we're in 16 years of one-party rule. Yeah. 16 years breeds total arrogance and contempt for regular people. The people in charge, they're machine politicians. They have no idea what they're doing. They don't care what they're doing. They don't care what the results are, because their only focus is their own power, staying in power, climbing the political ladder. Now you have Gavin Newsom, who's basically a governor in name only. He's only really interested in his presidential campaign. doesn't care about actually delivering results, just constantly lying and spending most of his time, it seems, being a social media content creator, attacking President Trump. Is pathetic. We are the greatest state in the greatest nation on earth. We deserve far better than this.
Well, Steve, let me ask you. I've noticed on your candidate website page, you said you will reach out across party lines when elected, if and when elected, and work with Democrats. And we've got a viewer named Sandy Maitland who's asking, how will you be able to govern with a Democrat supermajority in California?
It's a great question. In many ways, it's half of the pair of key questions that I think about all the time, which is number one, how are you going to win? And secondly, once you've won, how are you going to get anything done, given that there's a supermajority? Here's how I'm thinking about it. First of all, I just want to be really clear about something, that when I'm elected in November and take office this time next year, that will be a political revolution in California. And I will expect the legislature, and they may, mock and sneer and assume that a Republican can't win right now, but when I have won, they better take notice of it, and they better respect the will of the people. And my expectation, my demand will be that they work with me to implement the agenda that I ran on, because that's what the people voted for. And if they don't do that, then I will be very clear that they are trying to overturn the election, to undermine democracy. Let's use all the language that they throw at Republicans the whole time. So that would be my starting point, an expectation of cooperation to implement the plans that I ran on and that people would have voted for. But even in the absence of that, there's a lot that I can do as governor. I just want to lay out the categories. That by far the biggest is that as governor, you control the executive branch. You run the hundreds of state agencies and you appoint the thousands of bureaucrats in those agencies that right now, I'm on the road the whole time in California, listening, talking to people, regular families, small businesses. I was a small business owner myself. People know me from the television, as you mentioned, from Fox News, but most of my career has been either in business or working inside government. I was the senior advisor to the Prime Minister, David Cameron, in the UK before moving here, had my office next to the cabinet room there. And so one way or another, I've been involved in an executive role, trying to make things happen. And if you look at what's going wrong in California and what's really causing such pain and struggle for people, a huge proportion of it is coming not from the legislature, but from the bureaucracy, the executive branch, all these endless agencies, whether that's CARB, the Air Resources Board, pushing the insane climate crusade that's given us the highest gas prices in the country, the second highest electric bills in the country, energy costs for business that are just off the charts that make everything else so expensive. That's coming from CARB. You look at the Coastal Commission blocking desalination plants. You look at what's going on in the Central Valley, where I am the whole time with our great farmers and our ag industry, but burdened by endless regulations, but above all, taking away the water that they need to grow our food. That's the State Water Resources Control Board. You look at our great oil and gas industry. I'm there in Kern County all the time, talking to the industry there. That is an industry that's being crushed, again, by Democrat regulations. And where's that coming from? CalGEM, the agency called Geologic and Energy Management. In all of these cases, and many, many more, my plan on day one will be to be ready with the people that I'm going to put in there. We're going to kick out the ideologues and the climate extremists and the bureaucrats and put in place common sense people who are going to be there to help California get moving again so we can have growth and opportunity, and that will benefit everyone. So that's a huge amount you can do through the executive branch.
I think you just answered a second question from a viewer. This is from Ronald Stein. He's a two-time Pulitzer Prize nominated person on energy. And he says that all modern pharmaceuticals, I should say, rely on petrochemicals from crude oil for their creation and their medical supply chain. What is your plan for crude oil that will help maintain the medical supply chain within the medical industry? And I think you just...
Yeah. Well, I'll go into a little bit more detail. He's exactly right about that. And that's why this is just such a fiction and a fantasy that we can just end fossil fuels, which is what the Democrats, with their sort of the climate ideology, keep telling us. So there's war on fossil fuels. It's been going on now 2 decades. since they passed the Global Warming Solutions Act that implemented all this insanity, the cap and trade system that makes energy so expensive, and the war on fossil fuels. They are shutting down California oil production. I've been to the oil fields in Kern County, and you look as far as you can see, oil wells, half of them aren't working because they refuse to issue permits for routine maintenance. That's how they're doing it. Or to expand a well so you can increase it when it's coming to the end of its life. You can increase from 5 barrels a day to 100, just a little expansion, no permit issued for that. Or to drill new wells in existing oil fields where you've got, this is not oil fields in the middle of the Sierras. This is in an existing oil field to drill new wells. I've seen the concrete pads ready for the drill to come into no permit. That's how they are shutting it down. As a result of that, if you look back not that long ago, here in California, we produced most of the oil and gas that we use, around 80%. Now it's been reversed. So in all these years of the war on fossil fuels, so-called, the actual amount that we consume has barely gone down at all, like just around 5-6%. But the big change is that we are now importing most of it. Oh, nearly 80% is now imported.
Unbelievable.
We haven't stopped using it, exactly as the question states. It's a vital component of modern life. We're using roughly the same amount, but now we're importing nearly 80%, where we used to be producing that here. And how are we importing it? There's no pipelines of oil into California. It all has to come by ship. It's coming in on giant super tankers, which run on the most polluting form of transportation on the planet. It's called bunker fuel. And where are they coming from? Our number one provider of oil right now in California, it used to be California because it was mostly within our state. Now, Iraq.
Oh.
Iraq. That's our number one provider of oil. The other week before Christmas, Gavin Newsom was in the Amazon rainforest lecturing everyone about climate change at the ridiculous climate summit. Well, guess what? California is now the number one buyer of oil that's drilled in the Amazon rainforest. We buy half the oil that's coming out of the Amazon. So none of it even makes sense, even on their own terms. In the name of fighting climate change, they are increasing carbon emissions by this importation of oil. It is just insane. We've got to end all of that. And then when we do that, we open up our own industry, we create jobs and opportunity here in California, and we can bring the price down. And here's the sort of simple way to think about it. Instead of what's going on right now, which is because of this insanity and this ideology, we've got the highest gas prices in the country, higher even than Hawaii, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, even though we have abundant oil reserves. It's totally insane. And it's heading higher. We've just got another refinery, Benicia closing in April. And the projections are that gas prices may go from, what is it now, $5 or $6 a gallon up to $8. Oh. Well, with my plan, we're going to have $3 gas in California. That's going to be front and center of my campaign because we've got to get back to common sense, practical things that reduce the cost of living and make life affordable again in California, as well as helping every business.
Great answer. Did not anticipate the depth of that, and I loved hearing it. You mentioned affordability. I'm based in San Diego. A year ago, this was named the most unaffordable city in America. And that is a big part of your platform, too, is affordability for Californians. Make California golden again, as you say.
Yes. Well, it's actually not just the city. We are now 50th out of 50 states on affordability because we have the highest cost for everything. Gas, electric, water, insurance, rent, everything, groceries, the most expensive state in America to live by a long way. And so, and again, a little bit like I was saying with the wildfires, that wasn't a natural disaster. That was man-made, Democrat-made. It was far worse because of their policies. Same with these incredibly high costs. That is entirely driven by Democrat policies. A huge part of it actually is the climate crusade, because that's not just directly affecting costs, for example, with gas and electric, but also when it comes to housing. Why are rents and housing so high? A huge part of that is the environmental regulations that make it 3 or 4 times as expensive to build anything in California compared to another state. And then on top of that, it's the climate crusade that is forcing them into this position of saying, you can't have a single family home. We can't build outwards. We can only build upwards. Everyone's got to live in apartments in the urban core and use transit, no parking. That's not the California dream. That's the enemy of the California dream, what they're trying to do there. People want to live in single family homes in nice neighborhoods so their kids can play in the yard. That's what I will bring back. And by building that way, we can reduce those costs as well. So much of this is driven by their insane, extreme ideology, particularly in relation to climate. So on all of these things, we can bring costs down if we just dismantle, and that's the word, or take a sledgehammer to this bloated, nanny state, bureaucratic government that's shoving all the costs higher, and that's what I'm going to do as governor.
Wow. Steve, looking at the polls, depending on which poll you look at, they're all very close. I looked at one recently from Emerson College. You are leading all candidates according to that particular poll. It shows that you're at 16%, Democrat Katie Porter at 15%, Republican Sheriff Chad Bianco at 11%. However, so it's very tight, very tight. However,
yes. No, I was going to say the polls, I think we're probably going to end up at the same point, which is that actually it is very, there's a lot of candidates that are bunched around the kind of 15, 16, 17, 18% mark, whichever poll you look at. Most of the recent polls I've been leading, but honestly, not by much. There was one just before Christmas. I think I was on 18%, Eric Swalwell on 17%. I think Chad Bianco was also on 17. But, so it depends. Look, it's a close race at the top. And then there's a whole bunch of candidates that are far behind.
And there are according to Emerson College, 37% are undecided.
That's right.
I spoke to someone who called it the apathetic party. How do you go out and crunch into that 37%?
Well, that's what a campaign is for. So that's what we're doing very strongly, and we'll be turning up the volume very high during, starting this week, actually. And you'll be hearing a lot more on many. That's why, earlier this week, we launched the results of our investigation, a preliminary investigation into fraud in California, with Herb Morgan, who's down in San Diego, who's running for state controller. Herb and I have been working together on getting to the bottom of the fraud that's going on in California, which of course is way worse than anything we've seen in Minnesota. We published our preliminary findings based on whistleblower tips from the whistleblower fraud hotline that we set up about a month ago, califraud.com, coming to the conclusion that we've got at least $250 billion of fraud right here in California when you look at welfare fraud and all these things that are going wrong. So it's all about the campaigning. Look, that I wouldn't necessarily call people apathetic. I'd say, look, most people, they're busy. They got their lives to live. They're not obsessed with politics. Yeah. The election is still, June is the primary, the general election, November. So people just haven't focused on it. But as those dates get nearer and nearer, I think people will focus on it. And the more that they focus on it, and the more that they see me out there, I think they'll see someone who's an outsider. I'm not part of the system. I'm not a machine politician. I haven't run for office before, and I've got that outsider perspective to take on this corrupt machine that's been ruining California. Because after 16 years of one-party rule, basically we're a state where the rich get richer and regular working people get screwed. And it's because of this corrupt machine that just doesn't care about what they do. They just try and look after themselves and each other. And I've got the business experience, as I mentioned, to do this and get it right. The government reform experience, having worked inside of a government, the national level, the national media platform, the international experience. So I think that combination is what we need in California, not just to win the election, but once I've won, to do a good job for our beautiful state.
And, you talk about affordability, something that I saw on your campaign website, which caught my eye, and I think it would resonate with a lot of voters out there. Is if I have this correct, you believe in eliminating the state income tax for those Californians earning under $100,000 a year. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, I would love to eliminate it entirely, as some states have done, but it's about half the budget, and so you definitely can't do that overnight without increasing taxes elsewhere, which we pay enough tax already. We have the highest taxes in the country. So I've put together a realistic plan. I had it costed with my former colleagues at the Hoover Institution, where I was a fellow for a while. And so basically, I was trying to do two things with my tax plan. Number one, help the people who've been hurt the most by these Democrat policies, and that's working class Californians who are really being squeezed and crushed by these costs. We have the highest poverty rate in the country, unbelievably, in California, as well as the highest unemployment rate. And so we've got to help working people, and we've got to get people into work. And so that's the first part there, which is your first 100 grand, no state income tax. That'll help over 7 million households, thousands of dollars a year in some cases. But there's a very important second part to my tax plan, which is we've got to actually generate the growth and the jobs and the opportunity. Why is it that we've got the highest unemployment rate in the country? It's because businesses are leaving California, and businesses that could be coming to California are deciding to go elsewhere, driven away by the high taxes, the insane regulations, the climate crusade, all these things. And so we've got to make California, I mean, right now, and it's another unbelievable statistic. Chief Executive Magazine does a survey every year of the best and worst states to do business. They ask chief executives to rate the states. For the last 10 years, California has been 50th out of 50 for our business climate. California, we should be number one. We should be number one in all of these things. Right now, you know what we're number one for? Just was published the other day, U-Haul. We are the number one state for people fleeing the state. Number one in the country, because people are leaving. They're going to places like Florida and Texas and Tennessee, which are just more welcoming with lower taxes and less regulation. So look, on income tax, that's important for the working people, but above 100,000, I'm proposing a flat tax of 7.5% on income above 100,000, which also applies to businesses and business income, because then we'll start to once again be a place that businesses want to come and set up and create jobs and opportunities. So that's the tax plan. It's pro-worker and pro-growth, and we need both in California. And the last point is, how are you going to pay for it? Very important question, because none of this can be done just by wishing it there. We've got to cut spending, and we've done the costing of that even in the absence of growth, which I know my plan will deliver, but I haven't assumed that in order to understand how much it would cost. What I've just explained there would cost about 18.5% of the state budget in terms of lost revenue, and that's about a cut of 60 billion, roughly. 60 billion sounds like a lot, but we've just established there's $250 billion of fraud and waste and abuse. So I'm very much looking forward to going to Sacramento and cutting the waste and the bloat in our government so that we can cut taxes.
Amazing. Steve, my final question is this. You have said that if elected to be governor of California, because you have a good relationship with the Trump administration, that relationship will then be in place with Sacramento and the White House. How important, I mean, how favorable do you think that message is received by the blue state California in general in terms of voters?
Well, of course, there's going to be people in California that hate President Trump, and Trump derangement syndrome is very strong here. But remember, it's an election. You need 50%. You don't need 100%. Now, of course, I'd love to have as much support as possible from all quarters, including Democrats and independents, and I'm sure that I'll get that. But there's going to be people who are just unpersuadable on the question of President Trump. Look, I would just point them to the results. Look at gas prices coming down to historically low levels everywhere in America, pretty much, apart from California. I lay out my plan for $3 gas in California. When I say that on national television, I can see the host look at me like, what's so good about that? There are thanks to President Trump's pro-energy policies and deregulation, there are now 40 states where gas is below $3 or below. So look, whatever, we may not persuade people about that. I do think I've got a shot at persuading even diehard Democrats. Wouldn't it be good to have 16 years of one party rule? It's not healthy. It's not healthy to have one party running everything for so long. It's time for some balance. It's time for change and some balance in the system. And wouldn't it be helpful to have a governor who actually has a good relationship with the administration, is not going to be at war with them the whole time, but working together, try and get good results for Californians, and not just the president. It's half the cabinet are friends of mine. It's another reason I think I've got a lot to offer in this race, is that I've got that ability to mobilize national support and deliver results nationally for our state. And that's a big part of why I think I'm the strongest candidate to win in November, and then to do a good job as your new governor.
Steve, I thank you for joining us. Your message has been a lot stronger and a lot more powerful than I was anticipating. I hear so much guggly gook from politicians, not that you're a professional politician by any such imagination, but I know you know exactly what I mean. And I am very, very impressed and excited about what I just heard. We're about out of time here. Any final comment for our viewers?
I just want to say, this is really worth fighting for. I know a lot of people may think, what's the point? It's going to be Democrats in charge forever. That is not the case. There is a majority for change in California. It's a big change, even from the last governor's race, 2022, the last regular governor's race, where it was a kind of 50-50 in answer to that question, is the state going in the right direction or wrong direction? That's moved very negatively against the Democrats. It's now 60%, 65% of people saying the state's going in the wrong direction. There's a majority for change. I'm not saying it's going to be easy to win in November, but it's not impossible. I think this is our best shot in at least 20 years to take back power, to save our state, to bring some common sense and some balance into our politics. And in the words of my campaign theme, make this beautiful state that we love so much truly golden again. So I'd love everyone to get involved. We got to build a grassroots army. They've got the other side have got this massive corrupt machine, the government unions, they got all the money they need. We're building it from scratch. It's a startup here. And I'd love everyone's support. We're building a volunteer army. That's how we're going to do this. Grassroots, the people rising up against this corrupt system that's let them down so badly. So if you want to go to stevehiltonforgovernor.com, FOR, stevehiltonforgovernor.com, sign up to get involved. We'd love to see you.
Steve Hilton, thank you for joining me.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
Back with more right after this.